Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. If you're new here, consider subscribing. It really helps keep these stories coming. And while you're here, let me know in the comments where you're listening from. Now, sit back, relax, and let's get into the story. People like me don't usually believe in second chances. The life I led didn't allow for mistakes, and if you made one, you didn't get to learn from it. You disappeared. That's how it worked in my world. I was good at what I did. Too good. My line of work wasn't exactly the kind where you get to retire with a pension and a gold watch. I knew my time was running out, and I had planned on disappearing before someone made me disappear. That was the plan. But then the world fell apart before I could even get started. It began like any other job. I was in a high-rise hotel downtown, finishing up a contract. It was clean, quick, and quiet, just how I liked it. I had just wiped everything down and was heading for the exit when I heard the first screams. At first, I thought it was just some couple fighting in the hallway. People lost their tempers all the time in places like this. But when I stepped out, I saw chaos. A man was on the ground, clutching his arm, blood pooling beneath him. Another guy, no, something else, was crouched over him, tearing into him like he was a piece of steak. I'd seen plenty of violence in my time, but this wasn't normal. This was pure, mindless hunger. I reached for my piece out of instinct, but I hesitated. This wasn't a job. This wasn't a rival or some loose end that needed tying up. I had no idea what I was looking at. Then the thing looked up at me. Its eyes were empty, soulless. Blood dripped from its mouth as it let out a sound that made my stomach turn. That's when it lunged. I moved on reflex. Years of training kicked in, and before I even knew what I was doing, I had drawn and fired. The first shot hit it in the shoulder, but it didn't stop. The second hit its chest, and it barely flinched. The third, I put right between its eyes. That did the trick. The thing crumpled to the floor, lifeless. But that was just the beginning. Screams echoed through the halls. More people running, some fighting, others trying to escape. I saw a woman get tackled by another one of those things. Saw the same gnawing, the same hunger. My instincts told me to leave, to get out while I could. I took the stairs, 2 at a time, heart pounding as I reached the ground floor. The lobby was no better. The staff was either gone or torn apart. A man in a suit was being dragged across the marble floor, his fingers scraping against it as he was pulled into the shadows. I didn't stop to help. I know that sounds cold, but in my world, hesitation gets you buried. I pushed through the revolving doors and stepped outside into madness. The city was falling apart. I'd seen bad nights before, times when the city felt like it was teetering on the edge of collapse. But this was different. This wasn't some gang war, not some botched deal turned violent. This was the end of everything. People were running in every direction, screaming, fighting, shoving past each other just to get away from whatever was coming. Others weren't running at all. They were attacking. Their movements jerky and unnatural, their mouths open wide, teeth snapping at anything that got too close. I kept moving, ducking behind abandoned cars, stepping over bodies, some moving, some not. The only plan I had was to get away from the chaos, to find somewhere defensible until I could figure out what was happening. That's when I saw him. A man in a security uniform, holding a baton and shaking hands, was trying to keep one of those things back. His face was pale, his breath ragged. I could tell he'd never been in a fight before, not a real one. The thing in front of him used to be a woman, dressed in business casual, her blouse torn, her skin already graying, lunged forward. The guard swung, catching her in the ribs. It didn't slow her down. She tackled him to the ground, pinning him beneath her weight, her teeth snapping inches from his face. I should have walked away. This wasn't my fight. But something in me, it wasn't guilt, wasn't pity, something just told me I needed to act. I stepped in and did what the guard couldn't. A single, precise shot to the temple, and the thing went limp. The guard scrambled back, staring at me with wide, terrified eyes. Thank you. I didn't answer. I just looked down at the thing I'd put down, at the way it had kept moving, kept attacking, despite the pain. I'd taken out a lot of people in my time, but this was something else entirely. "What's happening?" the guard asked, still trying to catch his breath. I shook my head. "Something bad." He gulped. "Where are you going?" "Somewhere safe." He hesitated, glancing around at the city turning into a battlefield. "Can I come with you?" I almost said no. I wasn't the type to play babysitter. I worked alone, always had. But the way he was shaking, the way his eyes darted around like a trapped animal, I knew he wouldn't last long on his own. I sighed. "Come on." He followed without hesitation. We moved quickly, sticking to the shadows, avoiding the worst of the chaos. The sound of sirens was everywhere, but I already knew they wouldn't make a difference. The city was lost. It was just a matter of how long it would take for everyone else to realize it. I had one goal: get to my safe house. I kept a place on the other side of town, stocked with everything I might need if a job ever went sideways. Food, weapons, cash, clean IDs. It wasn't built for the end of the world, but it was better than being out here. As we made our way through the city, I noticed something that made my skin crawl. The infected weren't just attacking at random. They were spreading. Every time one of them brought someone down, that person would stop struggling after a few moments, only to rise again, their eyes empty, their bodies twitching, their hunger taking over. It wasn't just some outbreak, it was a chain reaction. And if that was the case, the city was already gone. We stuck to the back alleys, moving fast and quiet. The guy, his name was Evan, I learned, was still shaking, but at least he wasn't slowing me down. I had no patience for dead weight. The deeper we went into the city, the clearer it became. This wasn't just some isolated incident. Whatever this was, it had already spread too far, too fast. Cars were abandoned in the streets, their doors left open, some of them still running. Storefronts were smashed in, alarms blaring uselessly into the night, and the bodies, they were everywhere, some moving, some not. I had my piece out, fully loaded, but I wasn't trigger happy. Every shot I took needed to count. Noise attracted attention, and attention got you killed. Evan kept glancing at me, like he wanted to say something but didn't know how. Finally, he found his voice. "You're not exactly a cop, are you?" I snorted. "Do I look like one?" "No," he admitted. "But you handle yourself like someone who's seen things." I didn't answer. I wasn't in the habit of explaining myself to strangers, especially not ones I barely trusted. We kept moving, keeping our heads down. My safe house was still a few miles away, but I knew we weren't going to make it there without running into trouble. The streets were getting worse. More of them were out now, shambling between wrecked cars, staggering after anything that moved. Evan sucked in a breath. "Look at them. It's like they don't even feel pain." I watched as one of the infected, an older man, his skin already sickly and pale, lurched into a burning car. Flames caught his clothes, spread across his body, but he didn't react. He just kept walking, arms twitching, his jaw opening and closing like a broken machine. Yeah, they didn't feel pain. That meant one thing: headshots or nothing. We needed to pick up the pace. The longer we stayed out here, the worse our chances got. We cut through a parking garage, moving through the concrete structure as quickly as we could. It was dark, silent, the kind of place where anything could be waiting in the shadows. Halfway through, I heard the shuffling. I held up a hand, signaling Evan to stop. The sound was coming from the other side of the garage, just beyond the next row of cars. A single infected, swaying on its feet. Used to be a businessman, judging by the torn suit. His face was slack, mouth hanging open, something wet and dark dripping from his lips. I could take him out easy, one shot, clean and quiet. Then I heard it, another shuffle, then another. I gritted my teeth. It wasn't just one. It was a whole group, and they had just noticed us. The first one let out a sound, low, guttural, a twisted attempt at a groan. The others reacted immediately. Then they charged. I raised my piece and fired. The first one dropped. Another shot, second one down. But there were too many, coming too fast. Evan panicked. "Oh no! Oh no! Move!" I grabbed his arm and pulled him toward the exit. We sprinted, feet pounding against the concrete, the sound of the infected behind us growing louder. We reached the stairwell, and I slammed the door shut behind us, locking it as fast as I could. Sour, heavy thuds hit the metal a second later, shaking the whole door frame. I wouldn't hold for long. We needed to keep going. No more detours, no more distractions. We had to reach the safe house before it was too late. We didn't stop running until we were a few blocks away from the parking garage. Evan was gasping for air, doubled over, hands on his knees. I kept scanning our surroundings, piece in hand, ready for anything. The city wasn't safe, not by a long shot. Are they always that fast?" Evan wheezed. "No." I shook my head. "Some of them are slow, others aren't." That was the worst part. There was no consistency. Some of them dragged their feet, barely moving faster than a shuffle. But others sprinted, throwing themselves at their prey with reckless, unnatural speed. If they were all slow, survival might have been possible. But with the fast ones in the mix, the whole city was doomed. I checked my piece. 5 shots left. Not great. I had another clip, but I needed to conserve ammo. My safe house had a stash, but we weren't there yet. Evan finally straightened up. "Where are we going?" "Across town. I've got a place." "Food? Weapons?" I nodded. "Enough." That seemed to calm him down a little. We moved quickly, avoiding the main streets, sticking to alleyways and side roads. The city was getting worse by the minute. Fires raged out of control, thick black smoke rising into the night sky. The power grid was failing. Streetlights flickered. Some blocks were already completely dark. It was like watching civilization collapse in real time. A gunshot rang out in the distance. Then another. Someone else was fighting back. I didn't care. We weren't stopping for anyone. We reached an intersection and I froze, holding up a hand to stop Evan. He nearly ran into me. The street ahead was packed with them. Dozens of infected, all moving in the same direction. Some were shambling, others twitching, their heads snapping toward any sound. They hadn't seen us yet. Evan swallowed hard. What now? We go around. We cut through a side alley, stepping over broken glass and trash bags. Halfway through, I spotted something up ahead. A door slightly open. Looked like the back entrance to a convenience store. Might be supplies inside. I debated for half a second before making a decision. In here. Evan hesitated. Shouldn't we keep moving? I pushed the door open, scanning the darkness beyond, just grabbing what we can. We slipped inside. The place was a mess. Shelves knocked over, products scattered across the floor. Looked like people had looted it in a hurry, but not everything was gone. I grabbed a few bottled waters, some protein bars, stuffed them into my pockets. Evan did the same. Then I heard it. A slow, wet breath, coming from the next aisle over. I raised my piece, motioning for Evan to stay quiet. We crept forward. A figure stood in the dim light, swaying slightly. A woman, used to be anyway. Her arms hung limp at her sides, her head tilted at an unnatural angle. Blood covered her shirt, soaking into the fabric. She hadn't noticed us yet. I could take her out quick, but a gunshot in here would echo like a firework. I needed to be quiet. I pulled out my knife. Evan's eyes widened. He opened his mouth like he was about to say something, but I gave him a look that shut him up. Then I moved. Fast, silent. One arm around her head, the other driving the blade into the base of her skull. She went limp instantly. I lowered her to the floor without a sound. Evan looked pale. Let's go. No time for questions. We stepped back into the alley, moving fast. The city was burning. The infection was spreading. And we were running out of time. We moved like ghosts through the city, sticking to the shadows, keeping low, avoiding every unnecessary risk. I could tell Evan was still shaken by what happened in the store, but he didn't say anything. Probably for the best. I'd spent years making sure I could move undetected. Most people walk too loud, breathe too heavy, hesitate at the wrong moments. In my line of work, a second's hesitation could get you put in the ground. That training was keeping me alive now. Evan, though, he was clumsy, kept stepping on broken glass, bumping into things. I lost count of how many times I had to shoot him a look. If we ran into something bad, I wasn't sure he'd be able to hold his own. We were close to my safe house now, just a few more blocks. The building was an old auto repair shop, the kind of place people didn't pay attention to. I'd bought it years ago under a fake name, stocked it with everything I might need if I had to disappear in a hurry: food, weapons, cash, a solid steel door, reinforced walls. We just had to get there in one piece. Then we turned a corner and saw them. A group of survivors. 6 people, huddled together, looking exhausted. 2 men, 3 women, and a kid, maybe 12 or 13. Their clothes were torn, faces dirty. One of the men held a crowbar, the other had a kitchen knife. Not exactly well armed. They saw us and froze. Evan instinctively raised his hands. "Hey!" I grabbed his arm and pulled him back into the alley. "No." His eyes widened. "What? We can't just leave them." "Yes, we can. They're people. They're liabilities." I could already see the signs. They were too loud, too slow. One of the women had a bloody bandage wrapped around her arm. Maybe it was just an injury, maybe it wasn't. I wasn't taking that risk. Evan's jaw clenched. "We can't just—" Then a scream tore through the night. The survivors turned just as figures burst from a nearby alley, fast and hungry. The infected. The man with the crowbar swung wildly, but he wasn't trained for this. He barely grazed the first one before another tackled him to the ground. Chaos erupted. The woman with the bandaged arm tried to run but tripped. The kid screamed. Evan took a step forward like he was going to help. I grabbed him by the collar and yanked him back. "No, we move, now." "But they're done." He looked back, horrified, as the screaming continued. I didn't. We ran. I could hear him breathing hard, muttering under his breath, but I ignored it. I didn't feel good about it, but I wasn't about to get myself killed trying to save people who were already lost. Survival came first. We reached the edge of my block. The auto shop was in sight just across the street. Almost there. Then I saw movement. My heart sank. A group of infected stood between us and the building. Not a massive horde, but too many to fight head-on with what little ammo I had left. Evan cursed under his breath. What do we do? I scanned the area, brain working fast. I wasn't going to let a few roadblocks keep me from reaching my own damn safe house. There was an old delivery truck a few feet away, its door hanging open. Gasoline dripping onto the pavement. I had an idea. I turned to Evan. Get ready to move. What are you? I didn't answer. I pulled out my lighter, flicked it open, and tossed it onto the gas. Flames roared to life, spreading fast. The fire reached the truck's engine, and a second later, boom. The explosion tore through the street, sending fire and smoke into the sky. The shockwave knocked some of the infected off their feet. The others immediately turned toward the source of the noise, their attention completely off us. Go, I ordered. We ran. Smoke stung my eyes as we sprinted across the street. I reached the auto shop, grabbed the keys from my pocket, and shoved them into the lock. The door swung open, and we rushed inside. I slammed it shut behind us, bolting it tight. For the first time in hours, I let out a breath. We'd made it. For now. The second the door was locked, I turned and scanned the shop. Everything was exactly how I left it. Metal shelves lined the walls, stacked with supplies. Ammo, canned food, bottled water. A workbench in the back, tools neatly arranged, a cot in the corner, just in case I ever needed to lay low for a while. This wasn't some last-minute panic shelter. I'd built this place to be secure, to be stocked, to be ready. It wasn't perfect, but it was safe. For now. Evan was still breathing hard, hands on his knees. His face was pale, like he was still processing everything. I ignored him for the moment, heading straight for my weapons stash. A locked cabinet in the back, tucked behind a tool chest. I opened it, grabbed extra magazines for my piece, checked my rifle, counted my rounds. Still good. Evan finally found his voice. How do you have all this? I loaded a fresh mag, chambered a round. Don't ask questions you don't want the answers to. He swallowed. I could tell he wanted to push, but he didn't. Smart. Instead, he sat down on a crate, rubbing his hands over his face. I can't believe this is happening. I grabbed a protein bar, tossed it to him. Believe it. He caught it clumsily, staring at it for a second before tearing it open. He ate like a starving man, barely stopping to chew. I leaned against the workbench, watching him. You're not gonna last if you don't get your head on straight. He looked up. Excuse me. You freeze up in the middle of a fight, you hesitate. I shook my head. That's how people get taken out. His jaw tightened. I'm not like you, okay? I don't do whatever it is you do. No, I agreed. You don't. I let that hang in the air for a moment. He looked away. I had a normal life this morning. A job, a girlfriend, plans for the future. And now, he let out a bitter laugh. Now, I'm running through the streets with a guy who probably has a dozen bodies on him. I didn't correct him, the number was higher. But I wasn't going to apologize for surviving. A deep silence settled between us. Outside, the city burned. I could still hear distant screams, the occasional gunshot. Evan sighed. What do we do now? I checked my watch, maybe an hour until sunrise. Not that daylight would change much. We sit tight, I said. Wait until things settle, then figure out our next move. Evan hesitated. You don't think help is coming? I almost laughed. You saw what I saw out there. You think there's anything left to save? His face fell. He didn't have an answer for that. I didn't either. I just knew one thing. The world, as we knew it, was gone, and only the strongest were going to make it. Evan dozed off in the corner, his body giving in to exhaustion. I didn't blame him. He wasn't built for this. His whole world had shattered in a single night, and now he was stuck in a fortified garage with a guy like me. I didn't sleep. Couldn't. I sat by the door, piece in hand, listening. The city wasn't quiet. It was changing. The random gunshots were getting less frequent. Fewer people were fighting back now. Most were gone, turned, or too scared to make a sound. The infected, though, they were still moving, still hunting. I stood up, stretched, and made my way to a ladder in the back corner. It led to the roof where I kept a lookout spot. Good sight lines of the block, a way to see trouble before it saw me. I climbed up and stepped onto the flat rooftop. The air was thick with smoke. Fires still raged across the city, buildings crumbling, streets littered with abandoned cars and wreckage. But what really caught my attention was the movement. They were everywhere now. Hundreds of them, spilling into the streets, drawn by the fires, the sounds of the last survivors trying to fight back. Their bodies twitched unnaturally, heads snapping toward any hint of movement. Some were slow, others were fast. All of them were hungry. My safe house wasn't compromised yet, but it wouldn't stay that way forever. Something had to change. I climbed back down into the garage. Evan stirred, blinking blearily. "What time is it?" "Doesn't matter." He sat up, rubbing his face. "What's the plan?" I grabbed my rifle, slung it over my shoulder. "We can't stay here." Evan frowned. "Why not? You said this place was safe." "For now." I started gathering supplies, ammo, water, a few protein bars. "But it won't be forever. Too many of them out there. If we stay put, we'll get trapped." He ran a hand through his hair. "So, where do we go?" "There's a place outside the city, a compound, built for situations like this." I hadn't planned on heading there originally. Too many unknowns. But looking at the state of the city, I didn't have a choice. I knew the guy who ran it, an old contact. If anyone was still holding out, it would be him. Evan looked unsure. "How far?" 30 miles. His eyes widened. "You want to walk 30 miles? Not if I can help it." I went to the back of the garage and pulled a tarp off an old SUV. It wasn't flashy, but it was tough, reliable. I'd kept it in top shape for emergencies. This counted. Evan let out a relieved breath. Thank. Then we heard it. A single heavy thump against the door. Evan froze. "Was that?" I held up a hand, listened. Another thump louder. Then a low, guttural groan. Not just one. More. I moved to the door, peered through a small reinforced window. At first, I only saw a few of them, but then more came into view. They were gathering, drawn by something. Or maybe someone. I turned to Evan. My voice was quiet but firm. "Get in the car now." Evan didn't need to be told twice. He scrambled toward the SUV while I moved to the workbench, grabbing my duffel bag of extra ammo and supplies. The infected outside were getting restless. The thumps on the door turned into pounding groans, turned into screeches. Shadows flickered past the small reinforced window as more of them gathered. It wouldn't be long before they broke through. I slung the duffel over my shoulder and climbed into the driver's seat. "Buckle up." Evan fumbled with the seatbelt, hands shaking. "You sure this thing runs?" I twisted the key in the ignition. The engine roared to life, loud, powerful, too loud. Outside, the pounding stopped for a split second. Then the screeching started again, twice as frenzied. Evan cursed. They heard that. No kidding. I threw it into gear. Hold on. With a deep rumble, the SUV lurched forward. I aimed straight for the garage door. The reinforced metal bent outward for half a second, then tore open as we smashed through, sending chunks of steel and sparks flying. The second we hit the street, the crowd of infected turned toward us. Their eyes, if you could even call them that, locked onto the vehicle, and then they charged. Some were slow, dragging broken limbs behind them. Others were fast-moving like predators that had just spotted fresh prey. I didn't give them the chance. I floored it. The first few smashed against the bumper, tumbling under the wheels like rag dolls. The ones that had been clustered by the garage door were crushed instantly. But there were more coming. Too many. Evan was gripping the dashboard so hard his knuckles turned white. Where are we going? Out. The streets were chaos. Abandoned cars, burning wreckage, mangled bodies. Some moving, some not. I weaved between obstacles, tires screeching, hitting the gas whenever I saw an opening. The SUV plowed through the dead like they were nothing, but it wouldn't hold forever. Then a roadblock. A jackknifed semi was sprawled across the entire intersection, completely blocking our path. There was no going around it. Too many wrecks, too many bodies. Evan panicked. What now? I spotted an alleyway to the right. Narrow, but just wide enough for us to squeeze through. I yanked the wheel and slammed the gas. The SUV skidded, barely making the turn before we clipped a dumpster. Sparks flew as metal scraped against metal. Then we were through. Back onto another street, this one clearer. The highway was in sight. We were almost out. Then I saw lights, headlights, a vehicle. Not infected people. It was a military truck, modified, rolling slow down the road. Several figures stood in the back, armed. Survivors. Or something worse. Evan saw them too. Holy, should we stop? Maybe they can... I didn't slow down. Didn't even consider it. Maybe they help, I said. Or maybe they don't. Evan swallowed. So, what do we do? I kept my eyes on the road, on the infected behind us, on the world that had collapsed in a single night. We keep moving, and I pressed the gas. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe. Your support keeps these creepypastas coming. Until next time, stay alert, stay safe, and never ignore the feeling that something is watching.